Alright, so with a little over a week until we get to Renegades, we now have a very good idea how Bungie will be updating the game for the next expansion. One of the big things that players have spoken about since Edge of Fate dropped is the portal. Of course, the portal is part of the core Destiny experience at this point. It isn't really just linked to expansion content, so when we get to Renegades, the new offering on the Lawless Frontier, the new gear, and all of that kind of stuff will kind of live in its own bubble, but Bungie are additionally supporting the portal, the endgame and progression systems, investment, I guess to essentially try and save it to some extent. So we're going to round up all of the changes that will affect the portal and progression, what we can expect to see over the next few months, and what Bungie have said about their further plans beyond Renegades. So if you guys enjoy this one, be sure to give us your thoughts down below and hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell so that I can keep you up to date. Otherwise though, let's get into it. So in the recent kind of roadmap update that Bungie gave us, they stated that they're taking more time to craft the future of Destiny 2 and their plans moving forward, sort of indicating that much bigger changes are likely to arrive in 2026 and beyond. So because that's going to take time, they've said they're essentially trying to improve the portal as it currently stands as much as they can, which will essentially happen in the meantime while we wait for those further changes. So the focus for the moment, in the next couple of updates, is wider access to power progression, especially in expansion content, so players will be able to reach the power cap directly through Renegades activities if they like. Keep in mind they are not raising the power level as we go into Renegades, so whatever you've got right now, we can continue to progress in Renegades or indeed just stay at max power if we've already done it. Bungie have also said for the moment all exotic weapons and armor are now featured gear, and additionally there'll still be a 300 power catch-up, so if you're coming into Renegades for the first time or as a returning player, you'll be catapulted to 300 power as a starting point, and then they have additional improvements like vault capacity and upgrades to ease collection pressure. One of the big ways that Bungie support Destiny right now is through live events, so we'll still see the return of the Dawning in December. Then as we head into New Year, we'll get Arms Week in January, Guardian Games in March, and a return of Call to Arms in April. Plus they've said they'll bring back Iron Banner and Heavy Metal, although they haven't revealed specific dates yet. Obviously, looking at the portal being the main way into actual content in Destiny right now, we know that there are a series of flaws. I actually think the portal has always had a lot of potential, but the implementation has been pretty iffy and in some ways overly complicated when we look at things like the tiering and the modifier system for it. It very much goes against how Bungie marketed the portal as simplifying the experience. With the Renegades launch though, Bungie will add some new content to Portal, so that'll include a new solo ops activity, the Typhon Imperator, which will feature in Renegades activity spaces by the looks of it. Otherwise, Sunless Cell will return to Fireteam Ops, and we'll see Vox Obscura and Derealize added to Pinnacle Ops. And that should also mean that we now have a way to earn the Barra Dyad once again. Separate to this, Bungie will also add a new category to the portal, which is Arena Ops, focusing on 6-player activities. So, as we can see, Catch Crash, Astral Alignment, and Nightmare Containment will be featured modes in this new category. And they'll add new legendary weapons and armor sets to earn across the portal. So, Bungie say they'll add multiple themed sets to expand upon the cosmetic chase. And hopefully that will look like a complete portal refresh in terms of earnable gear. So as a bare minimum, there will be some new activity content for the portal, and when you consider the power and progression changes that Bungie have announced, it should hopefully at the very least be a less jarring experience. Something else that they will add essentially to the portal, although it will actually be in a different menu, will be called Vanguard alerts. Now, Bungie have said these will factor in as part of the kind of weekly rituals for the game, very much like Nightfalls that we had before, so they'll be housed in the Season Hub under the Vanguard Alerts tab. This will be next to the Conquests tab. We'll also get updated Conquests. And these playlists contain a set of activities, including the new 6-player PvE Arena Ops that are fast, uncomplicated, and have preset modifiers, which are best for players who want to relax and play some PvE while still earning great rewards. So on a weekly basis, we'll no longer just look at the exact same portal menu with the same activities, but there'll be this tab, which will have at the very least a rotating set of activities, and that will include a Grandmaster difficulty. So Grandmaster Vanguard alerts will take longer, they'll be more difficult, but offer greater rewards. They'll be very similar to the Grandmaster Nightfalls we had previously, and there'll be a dungeon and raid element to this, so the Renegades dungeon and Desert Perpetual will be added, with additional weekly challenges that grant rewards from the corresponding loot pool. And these activities will offer a multi-stage challenge with rewards and XP granted for each stage completed, so the weapons that we'll get from completing each stage will be tier 3 or above based on our account power, and among the highest power drops that we can earn in Destiny 2. So if you are still power leveling, Vanguard alerts is going to be a really good way to get additional weekly weekly progress. On top of that, they'll be the primary source for seasonal weapons featuring the accelerated Assault Origin trait, so that's a new Origin trait that loads a small amount of ammo to the weapon after dealing sustained damage. We can see as well inside of the Vanguard Alerts tab, Crucible Alerts will feature, so it's basically at least one featured PvP mode on a weekly basis. And by playing these, we'll earn extra things like chronologs, which help us claim items from previous season passes. Then there'll be arena ops, and Crucible having additional bright dust drops. And we can repeat these playlist activities and receive regular rewards based on score with a random chance of gaining another seasonal weapon with the Origin trait. Then completing Grandmaster Vanguard alerts with a B grade or higher will reward one pinnacle weapon with the accelerated Assault Origin trait and bonus XP. And the idea of this essentially is to truncate the portal into more of a curated selection of things that'll be featured weekly. I'm sure all players will run them on a weekly basis if the rewards are good, but especially if you find the portal as it stands a bit jarring, all the modifier stuff kind of annoying, and that element of getting tired of seeing just the same activities in the same categories every week, then that in itself is an improvement, right? It's not groundbreaking, but it improves the rewards and it adds a bit of variation to the mix. As we've said previously, at this point, it's kind of clear that this is the most we can really expect in the short term in the next 6 months in terms of changes to the portal, doing something far bigger, like integrating portal into the director map or completely reworking the modifier and difficulty system, which I would kind of like to see personally. It's kind of admirable that you can do that with activities, right? Adjust them so much and add so many different elements of modifiers, but at the same time, it's kind of exhausting playing the game in that exact same way. Having to stack all these modifiers on, they always get forgotten when you play a different activity or sign out. And there's also a component of it being a bit immersion breaking, right? It doesn't feel like a living world when the first thing you're greeted by is a series of menus with overcomplicated selection of modifiers and all that kind of stuff. So what we'll get in Renegades is certainly an improvement on the portal. The other component of this is Bungie's rework to the season hub. So we can see this also ultimately lives in the same menu as Vanguard alerts and conquests. And the seasonal hub has been updated with daily and weekly objectives, which are basically seasonal challenges, and then something called orders, which Bungie describe as objectives to complete while you're doing other tasks. So they're basically even more seasonal challenges, but more bounty-fied in a way, if you like. One of the good things is that the game will actually look at your loadouts, what you're using most of the time, and then try and craft objectives that suit your gear selection. So the good thing is we'll have to think a little bit less about changing the way that we're playing the game simply to satisfy these objectives. Bungie say completing orders rewards you with another order and a payout that matches the order's tier, so as we complete activities, we'll be increasing the chances that completed orders may upgrade to a higher tier, and while higher tier orders take longer to complete and may present a challenge, they will offer greater rewards. And those rewards kind of come in the form of these payout packages, which, on top potentially of earning rewards like weapons and armor, will also be a source of bright dust. So if you like farming bright dust, we'll basically be able to do that, although the returns will be diminishing over time. So each week, when we first play for the first day or so, we'll probably get a lot of orders that will grant us a large amount of bright dust. And then after reaching 1,000 bright dust in the weekly category limit, legendary payouts will provide 10 bright dust. Plus there'll be a seasonal category limit with 6,000 bright dust earnable, and then additional payouts providing 30 bright dust. So there's quite a lot of focus on bright dust there, but I know some players really enjoy grabbing all the cosmetic stuff in the game, so it's useful in that respect. In this tab though, the objectives, much like we see now with seasonal challenges, will award large amounts of XP. And so all of this is kind of the continuation of the bounty system. But built into this system will be something called the Returner's Boons. So players who don't sign in or earn a total of 30 ranks during a season will qualify for the boon in the following season, and it increases all experience gains for the next 6 months. And completing orders in the season hub will also offer something called a Returner's Gift, which will drop notable rewards like enhancement materials, tier 3 and 4 gear, exotic engrams, and again, bright dust, Eververse engrams, and a few other things, so Bungie are trying to encourage players to come back to the game as much as they can. But ultimately, that's why I wanted to round up all of these things into one place, because obviously with these systems being such a big part of how we invest into Destiny, how we get into the content and earn rewards, it kind of sets expectation on how it's going to change between Edge of Fate and Renegades. And versus removing the portal or totally reworking the concept, these changes seem relatively minimal, but as Bungie said, they are focused on improving the quality of life of these systems in the meantime, while Bungie think about, a better version of this for the future. And to give my 2 cents very quickly, I think it doesn't really have to be that complicated. If Bungie could have added portal categories to the bottom of the director for the game, it firstly would have been less immersion breaking, but categories also could have been used kind of like these Vanguard alerts to just highlight weekly activities that have bonus rewards in them, right? So instead of it being the entire game, it could have instead focused more on kind of featured content. And I'd also say, personally, I'm not that interested in the modifier system and having so many different difficulties based on your current power level, right? Once everyone's max power, which most people who are playing a lot of Destiny are kind of in that band where they're only really playing 1 or 2 difficulties of content now, and mostly earning tier 5 rewards, right? So in some ways, that's kind of all we really need, and it's kind of what we already had. You know, you have a normal mode, you have a hard mode, you have normal weapons, then you have adept weapons. And I think ultimately we're going to end up going back to something that's much more like that, assuming that Bungie do a big rework of the portal in future. And so when I said I don't think the portal's a horrible concept, it's just a poor implementation, I think Bungie have actually leaned into the portal just too much. It doesn't need to be as complicated as it is. And looking at the Vanguard alerts we just mentioned, in a strange kind of way, that's almost all we really needed. But I guess one of the challenges is updating all of Destiny's previous gear, old raids, old campaign loot, stuff from the throne world, whatever it is. None of that was factored into the tiering system, which to some extent may have been why Bungie had to over-design the portal for this narrower set of new content, which is relevant now. So that would be my feedback. In terms of whether these changes are enough for now, you'll have to give me your thoughts down below. It's definitely better. If you've enjoyed the roundup, a rating really does help us out. Hit subscribe as well for more content. We'll have more reveals for Renegades, no doubt, in the coming days, so keep it locked in. But otherwise, thanks for watching, and I hope you have an awesome day.